Welcome back to Motivational Moments. I am your host, Mason Metzger. If this is the first time you're listening to my podcast, I help individuals and organizations navigate what I have coined specialized challenges through facilitating self-discoveries and helping you maximize the positive impact of your life and leadership because believe it or not, we all have challenges, but everyone's are different. In today's episode, I'm going to discuss the working from home trend, which has penetrated society because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and this topic was brought onto the forefront of my mind for two reasons. First, one of my colleagues and someone who I also consider a friend and a mentor submitted an article to me, um, which was published by an independent news outlet called The Conversation, which discussed how COVID-19 has impacted the working from home trend specifically for people with disabilities. And so if you're interested in reading that article, I will put a link to it in the comments or in the video description, depending on where you're accessing the content of this episode from. Also, the second factor that played into making this the discussion topic for today's episode was I was recently interviewed by ABC 21 out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we focused on how I overcame obstacles during the pandemic and how I continue to do so because of assistive technology. And so I wanted to take a few minutes I wanted to take this time in order to dive deeper into that subject. So to start out, the article I mentioned a few minutes ago highlighted a few factors that um, have made working from home a feasible option for people with disabilities. And the first one was that prior to the pandemic, working from home was often seen as unreasonable when it came to accommodations in the workplace, which has changed because of the pandemic now that everyone is working from home and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. And the article also mentioned that there's a stigma associated with disability in the workplace. And although I do not have the typical job yet, I can definitely say that other than speaking and consulting and being a full-time student, which all three of those things are full-time jobs in themselves, but um but aside from that, I have experienced the stigma in other ways as a college student in particular, whether it be because of uh, systema- syst- systematic barriers or barriers caused by a lack of a lack of awareness when it comes to policy design, etc. But that's a topic for another day. But although these practices, particularly the working from home trend, is starting to become a feasible option or people are turning to it in a time like this one. It's still, there's still progress that needs to be made because um, organizations still find themselves locked into the established ways of doing things. And so the analogy that came to my mind as I was thinking about the working from home trend, or I guess it would be more of an illustration, but the illustration that came to mind was if you put out a ball of, or if you took Play-Doh out of its container and then you put it in your hand, and then you roll it into a ball, and then after you do that, you put it back onto the table and roll it out with your palms or a rolling pin. It becomes pliable, meaning you can shape it into almost anything you can imagine. And in the same way, related to diversity and inclusion in the workplace, organizations need to become more flexible and be able to adapt and mold to individuals' specific needs rather than having um, this really ambiguous notion of what's reasonable and what's not. And I think that's one of the major limitations of the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, and other legislation that currently exists. But I have definitely noticed that working from home has its benefits. As I stated earlier, I do a lot of speaking and consulting from home, as well as um, writing, because I am on a journey to completing my first book, which I hope to self-publish or find a publisher within the next 3 years at max. Um, so when it comes to my working from home experience, as I mentioned in the interview on TV, a major factor that has contributed to my continued success is assistive technology. And so, for any of my listeners or viewers who are not familiar with assistive technology, assistive technology is any item, piece of equipment, or software that has been adapted or designed with features that benefit individuals with disabilities. And so you'll find that many companies such as Apple and Microsoft are pioneers when it comes to accessibility, and for their products they have entire menus designed for accessibility features, and that gets into universally designing your products to meet individuals' needs. And so that's a really important part of working from home. But then also in terms of hardware, for my setup in particular, I have a Dell laptop that has a considerable amount of RAM and SSD storage in order to run Dragon NaturallySpeaking, which is a dictation software that I actually use to also record this podcast with this headset I'm wearing. And so my speech recognition software is called Dragon Naturally Speaking, and it allows me to control all the functions of my computer by voice, as well as to type various documents and do anything that you would do with a keyboard by voice. And so that's one of the primary tools that I use. And then I also, as you can see, the quality of my video has improved because I just added a camera to my setup, and so that's been really helpful. And then I also, at my desk, which is a standing desk made by a company called Vari, which allows me to take advantage of my wheelchair's standing function more frequently. I also have a Trackball Mouse, which allows me to navigate the computer using the mouse, even though I have limited dexterity or and also just I easily get fatigued, and so that's really helpful. And then I also have um an I a 12.9-inch iPad Pro mounted to my desk, and so I can take advantage of the accessibility features built into the iPad, as well as many other applications such as the screen reader that's built into Apple's products, or even the voice recognition, so I can actually control my iPad using my voice as well. But just speaking from personal experience, is not as accurate as Dragon, because if you're operating in a noisy environment with any type of speech recognition program or a lot of echo, it doesn't often operate that well. But I really enjoy having my iPad mounted at my fingertips because I'm able to answer text messages really easily and look things up and things like that. And then connected to my computer via a docking station, I have two monitors made by a company called BenQ, and they're really nice. And so all of those things allow me to function better and be as independent as possible, because that's primarily one of the goals of assistive technology is to limit the impact of someone's disability or condition on their ability to function. And so and I got some of these items through vocational rehabilitation, and then other ones I had just from purchasing certain items myself. And so, and so now I think I'm going to briefly talk about how these. Let me think for a moment. So I've gone through all of my technology setup and explained it. Is there anything else I want to add? I would just primarily, I guess, to kind of wrap up our conversation, I would say that that working from home in my specific case has definitely shown its benefits. And as I mentioned earlier, it minimizes some of the barriers imposed by a person's condition, and I would say that the new pieces of technology, whether it be hardware or software, or my desk or different tools, have definitely allowed me to maximize the positive impact of my leadership, and I'm still trying to nail down what my process is and improve it. And so I would encourage you to just take some time today to think about going into 2021. How can you improve your process, whether they be personal or professional, to maximize the positive impact of your leadership through setting goals and objectives and looking for areas for improvement. And so, if you found today's episode to be helpful, or you are looking to improve the your use of assistive technology, I will put links to the products mentioned in this episode in the description on YouTube. If you have comments, questions, or suggestions for a future episode, feel free to connect with me via my website, masonmetzger.com. I look forward to serving you all in 2021. And remember that you matter and you have the ability to make a difference and make today a great day.